recurring dream about Kenyon. In it, I'm walking to the post office on my way to my first class at the start of the school year. Suddenly, it occurs to me that I don't have my schedule memorized, and I'm not sure which classes I'm taking or where exactly I'm supposed to be going. As I walk up to the steps of the post office, I realize I don't have my box key, and in fact, I can't remember what my box number is. I'm certain that everyone I know has written me a letter, but I can't get them. I head back to Middle Path, racking my brains and asking myself, how many more years until I graduate? Wait, didn't I graduate already? How old am I? Then I wake up. On May 20th, 1990, Bill Watterson delivered this commencement address to Kenyon College. Some Thoughts on the Real World by Someone Who Glimpsed It and Fled by Bill Watterson. I think the reason I keep having this dream is because its central image is a metaphor for a good part of life. That is, not knowing where you're going or what you're doing. In the middle of my sophomore year, I decided to paint a copy of Michelangelo's Creation of Adam on the ceiling of my dorm room. The picture took me months to do, and in fact, I didn't finish the work until quite near the end of the school year. I wasn't much of a painter then, but what the work lacked in color sense and technical flourish, it gained in the incongruity of having a high Renaissance masterpiece in a college dorm. The painting lent an air of cosmic grandeur to my room, and it seemed to put life into a larger perspective. Those boring, flowery English poets didn't seem quite so important, when right above my head, God was transmitting the spark of life to man. My fondest memories of college are times like these, where things were done out of some inexplicable inner imperative, rather than because the work was demanded. I never spent as much time or work on any authorized art project or any poli-sci paper as I did on this one act of vandalism. It's surprising how hard we'll work when the work is done just for ourselves. If I've learned one thing from being a cartoonist, it's how important playing is to creativity and happiness. My job is essentially to come up with 365 ideas a year. I found that the only way I can keep doing that, year after year, is to let my mind wander into new territories. To do that, I've had to cultivate a kind of mental playfulness. We're not really taught how to recreate constructively. We need to do more than find diversions. We need to restore and expand ourselves. Our idea of relaxing is all too often to plop down in front of the TV and let its liquefying idiocy liquefy our brains. Shutting off the thought process is not rejuvenating. The mind is like a car battery. It recharges by running. For me, it's been liberating to put myself in the mind of a fictitious 6-year-old each day and rediscover my own curiosity. I've been amazed at how one idea leads to others if I allow my mind to play and wander. A playful mind is inquisitive, and learning is fun if you indulge your natural curiosity and retain a sense of fun and new experience. So, what's it like in the real world? Well, the food is better, but beyond that, I don't recommend it. I don't look back on my first few years out of school with much affection, and if I could have talked to you 6 months ago, I'd have encouraged you all to postpone this moment as long as possible. Unfortunately, that was all the advice I really had. When I was sitting where you are, I was one of the lucky few who had a job waiting for me. I had drawn political cartoons for the Collegian for 4 years, and the Cincinnati Post had hired me as an editorial cartoonist. As it turned out, my editor instantly regretted his decision to hire me. By the end of summer, I'd been given notice. By the beginning of winter, I was in the unemployment line, and by the end of my first year away from Kenyon, I was broke and living with my parents. Again. Watching my career explode at a launch pad caused some soul-searching. I eventually admitted that I didn't have what it takes to be a good political cartoonist. That is, an interest in politics. And I returned to my first love, comic strips. For years, I got nothing but rejection letters, and I was forced to accept a real job. A real job is a job you hate. I designed car ads and grocery ads in the windowless basement of a convenience store, and I hated every single minute of the 4.5 million minutes I worked there. My fellow prisoners at work were basically concerned about how to punch the time clock at the exact second where they would earn another 20 cents without doing any work for it. After a few months at this job, I was starved for some life of the mind that during my lunch break, I used to read those poli-sci books that I'd never somehow quite finished. Some of those books were actually kind of interesting. It was a rude shock to see just how empty and robotic life can be when you don't care about what you're doing and the only reason you're there is to pay the bills. Thoreau said The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. That's one of those dumb cocktail quotations that will strike fear in your heart as you get older. Actually, I was leading a life of loud desperation. I tell you all this because it's worth recognizing that there is no such thing as an overnight success. You will do well to cultivate the resources in yourself that bring you happiness outside of success or failure. The truth is, most of us discover where we're headed when we arrive. And at that point, we turn around and say, yes, this is where I was going all along. To endure 5 years of rejection to get a job requires either faith in oneself that borders on delusion or a love of the work. I loved the work. Drawing comic strips for 5 years drove home to the point that the fun in cartooning wasn't in the money, it was in the work. This turned out to be an important realization when my break finally came. Like many people, I'd found that what I was chasing wasn't what I caught. I wanted to be a cartoonist since I was old enough to read cartoons, and I never really thought about cartoons as it being a business. As my comic strip became popular, the pressure to capitalize on that popularity increased to the point where I was spending almost as much time screaming at executives as drawing. Selling out is usually more a matter of buying in. Sell out and you're really buying into someone else's systems of values, rules, and rewards. The so-called opportunity I faced would have meant giving up my individual voice for that of a money-grubbing corporation. It would have meant my purpose in writing was to sell things, not say things. My authorship would become committee decision. Creativity would become work for pay. Art would turn into commerce. In short, money was supposed to supply all the meaning I need. On those terms, I found the offer easy to refuse. You will find your own ethical dilemmas in all parts of your lives, both personal and professional. We all have different desires and needs, but if we don't discover what we want from ourselves and what we stand for, we will live passively and unfulfilled. Sooner or later, we are all asked to compromise ourselves and the things we care about. We define ourselves by our actions. With each decision, we tell ourselves and the world who we are. Think about what you want out of this life and recognize that there are many kinds of success. Having an enviable career is one thing, and being a happy person is another. Creating a life that reflects your values and satisfies your soul is a rare achievement. In a culture that relentlessly promotes avarice and excess as the good life, a person happy doing his own thing is usually considered an eccentric. Ambition is only understood if it's to rise to the top of some imaginary ladder of success. Someone who takes an undemanding job because it affords him the time to pursue other interests and activities is considered a flake. A person who abandons a career to stay at home and raise children is considered not to be living up to his potential, as if job title and salary are the sole measure of human worth. To invent your own life's meaning is not easy, but it's still allowed, and I think you'll be happier for the trouble. Reading those turgid philosophers here in these remote stone buildings may not get you a job, but if those books have forced you to ask yourself questions about what makes life truthful, purposeful, meaningful, and redeeming, you have the Swiss Army knife of mental tools, and it's going to come in handy all the time.